Edwards cuts through the defence line like a knife through butter. He beats Vapers and shoots, and it's in the net. A beautiful goal.
Some people are on the pitch. They think it's all over. It is now. It's four. The reserves are on. There's George Easton. There's Jimmy Armfield.
The guy who takes my position, I hope he will find it a little bit smoother and everything will go well for him.
And Breno has scored! And that was the start that Leeds United wanted.
Roberto Baggio, the bar! Well, that was incredible. But even the great players feel tension.
It's a terrific honour to be in charge of your country's football team.
With regret, the FA and Glenn Hoddle have today agreed to terminate Glenn's contract.
This is a match that's had everything. You know, it's pure theatre, really.
Tell us, first of all, you were born in Denton, Manchester. How did you end up in Blackpool?
Wartime, really. I was at school in Denton and I came home one day with a gas mask. I remember in a cardboard sort of container with like string around my neck. I can always remember it. And at the time there had been bombs in Manchester. You know, I'd seen them, none too near me. I had my mother and father talking and it didn't all go down well, I know that. And the next thing I knew, I was living in a boarding house here in Blackpool with my mother. We lived 2 floors up in a room no bigger than this. And we lived in there for nearly 4 years. We just had one bed. I can see the room as if it was yesterday. We had drawers, little table of drawers, and a little sort of semi-book stand. That was it. And my mother looked after the boarding house. She helped in the cooking, and because the Air Force were billeted there, Polish Air Force. They were all going off to various venues and so on, you know, coming and staying. Some stayed with us. We stayed there till the end of the war. My father used to come over at weekends. My father was slightly too old to go in the forces, but he was the senior air raid patrol warden in that area where he was. So he had to stay there, and he was a grocer's assistant in the co-op. And he used to come at weekends whenever he could.
And what was life like for the young Jim?
The one thing people never tell you about wartime is, you know, we had no street lighting for 5 years. None at all. And of course, from sort of the end of October till February, you know, it was dark a lot of the time. So you've got to learn I had to run the streets a bit. I got in a bit of trouble. I played truant from school a few times. The school board, as they were called, I remember coming around to see my mother and asking where I was. And that's how it got discovered. It wasn't looked on very favourably because there were enough troubles around, you know, in the war and so on, without kids, you know, playing hooky. The evacuee children it was slightly different for those who were already entrenched in the school, you know. You get that even today. And so I had to learn to scrap a little bit, but I got through all right. Went to Revo school, but I managed to get 11 plus. That was the big turning point for me.
So you got 11 plus?
11 plus, yeah.
To go to a rugby school?
Well, a lot of the lads who left, or girls who left, they went to other schools. There was Blackpool Grammar School, the girls went to collegiate and schools like that. My father said, no, you're going to Arnold School. And the reason he said that was because he knew 2 people in Denton who ran a hat factory. Denton is where all the hats were made. They sent their 2 sons as boarders to Arnold School in Blackpool. So my father thought that was good school. And he also knew that it was firm, the discipline. And he decided, that was me, there was no choice, that was it. That's how I finished at Arnold.
And what's Arnold School about to be called?
The Armfield Academy, yes.
So the story comes full circle.
Well, it does, because the funny thing was, the school was good for me, because I had some tricky times in my early days. We used to get reports, and I can remember one of them which said, he must improve both in work and behaviour. Simple as that. And I had to take that home for my father to sign. And we had a headmaster, believe me, he was a strict disciplinarian. He was one of those, wherever you were in the school, he was stood next to you. I gave this to my father, who gave me a good hiding, sent me upstairs, and then I went to school the next day. The headmaster read out all the people he wanted to see. And lo, Ben Adams' name led all the rest, you know, the famous poem. So I went to see him, and I always remember it. It was a moment of trepidation. I was outside the door, and he didn't knock harder than that. The door was open. I knew he was in. He didn't answer. So I thought, you didn't answer, knock twice. And then a voice said, come. Not come in or anything. And he was writing like this. I can see him now. And I came in and stood in front of him. And without looking up, he said, those words which are, they're imprinted in my head. Now what am I going to do with you? So he said, and before you say anything else, I've had a word with your father on the phone this morning. I thought, oh my God. It was going worse. Anyway, cut a long story short, I got what was called a Saturday afternoon detention. And I had to write an essay on how I'm going to improve both in work and behaviour. And I was in quite a clever class. There's 6 lads out of our form went to Oxford or Cambridge. And I went from 23rd in the form to, I think, about 10th or 12th. And he sent for me again, headmaster, who was called Frank Holgate, who I got to really like in later years. And he said, right, now we've found you out already. That's what he said. Right, anything less, and it'll be 2 Saturdays. And even more behives, that means you get the stick as well. It sort of straightened me out a little bit, really.
But you're at a rugby-only school, so how do you end up on the books of Blackpool as a footballer if you're at a rugby-only school? Because presumably they didn't play football at the school.
No. Well, I always used to run around a lot. I always ran. Wherever I went, I used to run. I used to like running. If I didn't feel so good, I could go for a run and I could put a smile on my face. So I would quite often, run night time. And then during the times that get free at weekends and so on, play on the beach with my friends who lived nearby to where we lived. My father came home after the war and he rented a little shop and he lived there and we could get to the beach and we had 1 or 2 very good players. We had a lad called Kenny Booth who's signed for Blackpool with me. His father had been a pro footballer. He was a better player than me. Played 1 game in the first team. We drew 2 each at Burnley. He scored the equalising goal and he played really well. And the following week he was back in the reserves. Sort of broke him. But basically it went on from there, playing on the beach, and I nearly always had a little tennis ball in my pocket. And just push it along the street and take it, and play with it. And that's how I learned to become a footballer.
And the game that you were spotted in, you said you liked running, you were actually playing on the wing, weren't you?
Yeah, well, I went to the wing. But what happened was, it was the PE teacher at Arnold School who said to me, he was called George Neal. He said, I've seen you play football around, kicking a ball around. He says, they're having a match at Bloomfield Road, he said, on Friday afternoon. I think it was, I'm not sure when it was going towards Easter time. Go and ask him if you can get a game. He said, have you got any boots? I said, well, yeah. I thought I had, So I said, yeah, I think I have. On the Friday, I went. They had everybody's name down, except mine. The 2 men who were taking the practice, one was called Alec Munro, who played for Blackpool, just before, he'd retired then, and Alec Roxburgh, who was a goalkeeper for Blackpool. They were picking the teams down, and they were 1 short, a winger. So he says, can you play on the wing? I said, oh, yeah. He said, have you really played on the wing? So I said, yes. It's a lie. So I said, anyway, he says, right, OK, play on the left wing. I thought, oh, cracky, because I was right-footed. Anyway, the team I was playing for won 4-1, and I scored all 4, incredibly. And, I was never, the one thing you would never latch against me, a goal scorer.
How many games of organised football had you played by that stage? Because you said you learnt to play on the beach. Were you playing for a team? Were you playing for anyone?
Well, they tried to form a team at the Sunday school, but it didn't last. Played, a few games like that. No, I would say I learned to play on the beach.
So you hadn't played much organised football at all?
No. The trick was, you see, I was coming in on my right foot most of the time. And this lad who was playing against me, he was the right fullback. He was a bit stone dead on it, and I soon worked that out. And the ball was coming over from the right side, where we were particularly strong, this group we had. And I was quite often left on my own, just put it away. And yeah, my old friend Ray Charnley, of course, who was no longer with us, unfortunately. He was my roommate for 10 years. And I told him this story. Can't believe that story.
So you go to Blackpool, of course. Oh, you weren't? You were never an apprentice?
No, I wasn't an apprentice. I stayed at school till I did A-levels. I got all my O-levels, 3 A-levels, history, geography and economics. And I got accepted at Liverpool University to read economics. What we had to do in those days, we had to go in the army. And this was another turning point I had, really. I left school, I joined the King's Own Royal Regiment, trained there, I played football, you know, in the army and so on. And then the Korean War had ended, but there was still, you know, like when wars end, it goes on for a bit longer, and it seemed to go on, and we were still sending troops out to the Far East. And in fact, a few of the lads who were with me, there was 90 of us, about 84 or 5 were sent out to the Far East. They went to Hong Kong. So we had 2 weeks leave, which I had. And what they did, they took the top 5 names off, and they stayed behind because they asked me what I'd like to do. Because I'd been at Arnold School, I'd been in the cadet force, and I had A-levels, going to university. They asked me if I'd been interested in getting a commission. I said, no, not really. I'd rather be a PT instructor or something to do with sport. So I got parked off to Wales, to Oswestry. I was on the PE course there. And then I went to Aldershot. And then I came back. And then I used to train the recruits on PE games. That part was quite good. I ran the football team. We won the North West District League, which pleased our commanding officer because he'd never won it before. That was it really, the army.
So how did you get back to Blackpool then, and to becoming a pro after being in the army?
Well, it's an incredible story because I was at Lancaster, I was within reasonable distance if I could get home. Just getting home was the problem. It was 2 trains in those days, Lancaster to Preston, changed Preston to Blackpool. But I was fortunate, I had a friend who lived here. He actually lived around that corner. He was an accountant in Lancaster, and I used to ring him up, he'd come and pick me up, bring me down. And I got 1 or 2 games, I'd played for 1 or 2 third team games for Blackpool, and then it was in a third team game, I was the right winger. I was still playing on the wing from the 4 goals, and I wasn't having that much success. Anyway, our right back got carried off. I remember our trainer at the time, Sam Jones, said, nip between the 2 positions. So I said, okay, and I played there. The next time the team went up, I was right back. So it's been a chapter of accidents, really, as opposed to, you know, a planned career. But I think all of it's down to, frankly, put it bluntly, the fact I could run.
All lined up, Blackpool in the dark shirts kicking off for this 1953 Cup final, and away they go. There is little Ernie Taylor himself. And now here comes Mortensen. Out to the great maestro Matthews himself.
Tell us about Blackpool's greatest day then. Stanley Matthews gets his Cup winners' medal at long last in 1953. Where were you?
I went with the reserve team and everybody. We all went, yeah, they took us down on the day. We stood up on the Kop behind the goal that Stan Mortensen scored 2. It was incredible because, you know, they'd been in 48 and 51 and lost both times. And this was coronation year, of course, and everybody's dream was for Stanley Matthews to get his cup medal. That's why it became known as the Matthews final. And Stan Mortensen, of course, scored a hat-trick.
And everyone easily forgets that, yeah.
And everybody called it the Matthews. He's still the only player ever to score a hat-trick in an FA Cup final at Wembley. It's incredible, that, when you think about it, isn't it?
There he is, Mortensen. It's a lovely goal. Bolton 3, Blackpool 3. And Bolton now really struggling with a badly depleted side. They've got to pull something out of the bag now.
Morty was the town hero. Stan Matthews was the talisman. Didn't work with that maestro. That's what they called him, maestro. But Morty was lovable, brave, fast, scored goals, you know.
Was he irritated that it was the Matthews final?
No. Morty would never get irritated about anything like that. Never. Because he always used to say, I'd be nothing without Matthews.
There's the man who's really fighting for his cup medal. Could he score the winning goal now himself? Is there? Perry.
Terry. What a final.
Do you remember feeling a great sense of relief for Stanley Matthews that at last he'd won it?
I think I did, because I still think he's England's best ever player. Taking everything, you know, the time he played. I'm not saying he'd be the same player today as he was then, but take everything. He was fit. He was so fit. Do you know, I never saw him out of breath. You couldn't give him the ball enough. He was impeccable in his behaviour on the field. He always used to say, if they kick me, I know I've got them. The other thing was too, he was innovative. He could do things that other people couldn't do. And, you know, and above anything else, he just had fantastic skill.
There it is. And where's Stanley Matthews? There's Joe Smith running onto him. There's Stanley. At long last, he's done it. And everybody cheering him. And what a great final this has been. There's Joe Smith with Matthews.
What was he like as a person?
Unassuming. I mean, it's the first goal I ever scored. This will tell you a bit about him. We were playing Leicester.
So, because you were playing behind him, of course.
Oh, yeah. I played behind him for about 5 years. Yeah. He used to say things like, I'm making you into a half-decent player. He always have jokes, you know, about that. But when I scored my first goal, he wasn't playing. We were losing 3-2 to Leicester. And at the last minute, it comes to me on the edge of the box what the heck I was doing there, because I was playing right back, I can't remember. And I hit it, and it's one of those that just went in. So I jumped up in the air, you know, 18, 19-year-old, wherever I was, and I was running around and so on. It finished 3-3. It was time up, virtually. And I was a bit full of myself, and the crowd were all, good old Jim, and I was going off and waving, you know, as a teenager would. I went off, and I sat down, and everybody went out. And Matthews came in the dressing room, when everybody was sort of out there, and it was just me and him. He just put his hand on my shoulders as if to say, don't get up. So he says, what was that all about at the end? So I says, what? Town hero. And I thought he was joking, you know, so he says, yeah. There was still 2 minutes of injury time to go. We could have won that match, but you were still full of scoring your goal. He says, what if they'd have got a corner in your mind had still been on that goal? You've got to be prepared to be ready. All this celebration, he says, no. They know who scored. They're all happy for you. I was. He says, you know, concentration. After a goal, concentration. Get back in your position. We could have won that match. We drew 3 each. I went.
You shrunk in your chair. Was that one of many lessons you learnt from playing with him and behind him?
Yeah, he said to me, you never get anything out of retaliating. Weakness of character. And the other thing he always said too, you know, was you've got to be fit to play. People are actually paying to see how fit you are. Well, the manager once said, Joe Smith actually once said to us in a team talk, in all seriousness, any queries at all? Some bright spark said at the back, I think it was Roy Gratrix, he said, what if plan A doesn't work? And Joe, in all seriousness, said, well, do what we always ball, get the ball to Stan.
If in doubt, give the ball. Sort of shouting to you quite often, Jim, wasn't it? Give it to Stanley.
Any trouble, yeah. Well, I was giving him these 5-yard passes, you know, giving him the ball, and everybody keeps saying, you know, his pass rate is fantastic.
You'd say yours would be over 5 yards.
I tell you what he was good at. He was good at getting himself in possession to get the ball as well, because he was quite often double marked. And that's how we started the overlapping full-back game. People said, oh, it was my innovation. Well, it wasn't really, other than that quite often used to play 2 men on him, full-back, and then the number 11 or the left winger would go back and double up. So if you got past him, you'd have another one. So I said to Stan, in all humbleness one day, I said, the two of them were stood like that. If I went round the outside, put the ball through, you know, I might be able to get to the ball. And he looked at me and went...
Just a little nod.
That means no. So I went back, when we were playing Luton, and we were winning 2 or 3-0, I remember. I got the ball, I give it to Stan, I went up, that 2 lads dropped back. So I set off round the outside, and Stan put the ball through, right through the gap, and I was through, on my own, coming in at the right side. Anyway, I shot wide. So we got in the dressing room after the game, thankfully we won. And Joe Smith, the manager, said to me, what was that all about? So I said, what? Wing play, what's all that about? I said, well, I saw space, and I thought, you know, I said, I don't think you noticed. The number 7 we've got has done quite well without your help so far. He wasn't very keen on it. It was only when Joe went, you know, that we liberated it a bit more. But there it was. With England, you know, we started doing it.
Jimmy, we associate with Blackpool forever, of course, but Matt Busby wanted to take you to Manchester United in 1957.
Yeah. Well,
now, it's not... Clearly, today, you'd have had an agent, you'd have had an army of PR people, if you'd wanted to, manoeuvring that move to Old Trafford. But it's very different in those days when clubs owned your registration. You couldn't go anywhere if Blackpool didn't want you to go anywhere.
No, you couldn't move, no. When I was in the army, I was very friendly with Duncan Edwards. They were all my group. Eddie Coleman, Bill Folks, they were all in the army team with me. I forget how it got out anyway in the press. He knew that I knew Duncan quite well. And this is Joe Smith. Anyway, Matt Busby had made an approach to see if I'd be interested in going, you know. And they used to train quite often at the Norberg Hydro in Blackpool, Manchester United. And I've been up there to see Duncan and Eddie Coleman. Joe Smith said to me, well, Manchester United have inquired about you. So I said, yeah. He said, well, you tell your friend Edwards, if he wants to tap anybody, tell him to come and tap me. Now, off. That's what I got.
Did you want to go?
It hadn't really entered my mind, really, to be honest. It was a bit of a surprise. I didn't believe it until I actually heard it. Because, you know, it was the Busby Babes. I'd have gone. Just before Munich.
It was the year before.
So it was a February. Well, this was at the end of 57, I would think.
On the fringe of a Munich airport lies the wreckage of an airliner, still smouldering from a crash in which 21 people were killed. Tragedy enough at any time. But in that plane were a group of young men who were almost the personal friends of millions. Manchester United, the finest soccer team Britain has produced since the war. And 7 of them died in the crash. 10 others, as well as their famous manager, Matt Busby, were injured.
Talk to us about Duncan Edwards. It's a name that everybody knows, and everybody knows that he died at Munich. Tell us about what he was like as a person, and tell us particularly what he was like as a player.
Well, I always had a bit of a soft spot for him because he's such a good player. He's one of those players who had terrific power. When we played the Czechs, I remember playing the Czechs in Bratislava, and he terrified them. I think he scored 2. I think we won 3-0 or something. And he was running forward. I mean, he got 1 goal, and he was running, and he ran towards them from the left-hand side of the field, just left of centre, and he hit it first time. And I thought, why didn't they come out and tackle him? This is the Czech team, remember, that got through to the World Cup final in '62. And they all looked at him. He could intimidate you because he was powerful. But the one thing very few say, he was very skillful with the ball, very skillful. I always remember when we were in the army, we went down to Shrewsbury and he was playing with the ball. And it's the first time I ever realised he could do anything with it. You know, flick it up, bring it down, turn. You have to remember we were young. And, you know, there was time for him to develop. He was still only a young chap.
You're quite shy?
I wouldn't say shy, no. No, he's not shy. He had an outgoing side, and he could laugh. He could laugh very easily. He played against the Germans in Berlin, and we won 3-1. I wasn't playing. I read somewhere afterwards, I forget who the manager of Germany was, said, he's phenomenal. And he was.
Near the German goalmouth, left half Duncan Edwards cuts through the defence line like a knife through butter. He beats Wafers and shoots, and it's in the net. A beautiful goal.
He would have had a great bearing on the next few years through the World Cups. I mean, so in Munich, you know, we lost half the team. 58, we'd have won it in 58 and 62. When you think, you know, we lost Tommy Taylor, who's a good centre forward, Roger Byrne, good full-back, you know, good player, Duncan Edwards, David Pegg, Eddie Coleman. They were all top-line players.
Duncan Edwards injured, Bill Fuchs injured. Mark Jones killed. Ray Wood injured. Eddie Coleman killed. David Pegg killed. Dennis Violet injured, Tommy Taylor killed. Roger Byrne killed. Bill Whelan killed, John Barry injured. At the time of going to press, Matt Busby was fighting for his life. The team secretary, Walter Crickmer, was killed.
Because Manchester United had tapped you up in inverted commas, do you think about the fact that had you gone to Manchester United then, you would have been on the plane? Do you think about that at all?
No, never really thought about that. No, it was bad enough as it was. I remember where I was when it happened. You know, we'd been doing afternoon training, and so we'd been kept at the ground during the day, and afternoon training, the news came that, you know, it was hard to believe at the time. You have to remember the war had hardened us a bit.
But you're in no doubt Duncan Edwards would have been one of the greats of English football.
Oh, yes. I'd have to believe that. He imposed himself on, you know, we played against him. We were going for the title, Blackpool, at one stage with United. And I remember I was going down the field and he absolutely floored me. He got took the ball and he took me as well. And I'm on the ground and I'm on the ground, looked at him, I said, thanks very much. I can't tell you what he said. But the point was, you know, he was a terrific competitor. Terrific competitor.
About your first full cap.
Yeah, I'd been in the Young England team for 3 years, probably. I do think that is a good grounding. We were on a tour. We were going to play in Italy and we were going to play in Germany, and the England team were getting ready to go and play on the South American tour. So Walter Winterbottom came with us because before they set off, he'd come and watch us. We were playing in Italy. Big game. It's a big crowd, Milan. And we won 3-0. He decided after the match to take Jimmy Greaves and me off the tour to go and play with the first team in Brazil. But instead of getting ready to fly off to Germany, he was with us on the overnight train where we picked up a Swiss airplane, 4 of us in the plane with the Swiss manager and his wife. Flew to London, picked the team up, flew to Brazil. I had to ring up when I got, says, I'm not coming home, I'm going to Brazil. And they had no left fullback. Walter Winterbottom said to me, have you played left fullback? And I said, not really, no. Well, he said, I think you better manage it. So I said, okay, we got Don Howe was right back. Myself, Billy Wright was centre half. It was a transitional period for the England team. Maracana, that's where I made my debut. And they scored in the first minute. They scored a goal and I hadn't touched the ball. I thought, blimey, you know, it's a good start, that. And it was one of those days, you know, when we came lined up, it was, you know, at the time, but they just won the World Cup in '58, you know, sort of thing. It was Pelly and all that group. We were lined up, and I can always remember the helicopters flying over, rockets going, the band were playing, the samba bands, everything was bouncing up, dancers around the ground. My head was all over the place, you know. Billy Wright was trying to, you know, calm us all down, but, you know. Anyway, we lost 2-0, I think we lost. We played well, actually, in the second half. I got going second half. But by then we were 2 down. But I played then against Peru, Mexico, and USA on that tour, all left back.
Well, your first 4 caps were all left back.
Out of position.
You said that your wartime experience has shaped you, as I think probably shaped all your generation. Yeah. So my question is, when you're lining up making your England debut, you know, we like to think it's the most emotional moment of your life and you're thinking of your mum and dad and your family and your friends and isn't this incredible? You're just thinking, it's a game of football, here we go. Well,
I was on edge, obviously. I was still young. First game, playing against the world champions on their own pitch. And Billy Wright was trying to make concentrate, you know, trying to get the concentration right. That was the thing as much as anything. So really, it took a little bit of it to steam in. Once we got going, the crowd, it was unbelievable, the crowd figure, but it was absolutely packed. It was a totally different world for somebody who'd been in the army, gone out to play in Italy, and here we are.
So by the time you went back for the World Cup in Chile in 1962, at least you had been exposed on that tour to some of the crowds, to some of the environment, to some of the terrain, because you stayed in some quite Spartan places in that World Cup, didn't you?
62, yeah. We got off the plane, Santiago. We got a train up to another destination. Then we got into a single track carriage, and that took us to a mining camp, the Braden Copper Company.
Up in the hills?
Up in the hills. And we stayed there for 2 weeks before we played. The only entertainment was what we could do ourselves, playing cards or whatever. No television, remember. There was a golf course, a 9-hole golf course roundabout, which was owned by the Braden Copper Company, which we'd go to. And there was a sort of a cinema, which occasionally showed a film that we might understand, you know.
Were you bored?
No, I wasn't bored. I've never been bored with footballers, no. We always found something.
In that World Cup, you reached the quarter-final. You lost to Brazil on your debut. You lost to Brazil there on their way to winning the World Cup back-to-back.
Yeah.
Not a bad Brazilian team to lose to be fair.
No, you know, they won it, but the point was they were good. They were a good team. But frankly, we played well. We had a real knockdown. Before we set off, we lost Bobby Smith, which was a real blow to us. And then when we got there, we lost our centre-half, Peter Swan. He got terrible stomach trouble. He was in hospital, never played a game for us. That's how young Bobby Moore came into the team. Bob didn't have Peter's experience and know-how and his partnership with Ron Flowers, you know. I mean, he did all right, nothing to do with that. What I'm saying is it was just, we lost 2 key players there. We played well. We missed 2 good chances in that game. And funny, you know, when you look back, when I thought about it, I thought the Czechs would have been next. We'd already beaten them 4-1 in Bratislava the year before. And I thought to myself, this is it. I thought, we're going to do this. 62. I honestly believed it. And I've never been one who's, you know, always been that overconfident. But I just thought we could do it. I think it was around my best time, between 60 and sort of 66. And a few of our players were very much the same. And the game changed on a free kick.
Is Didi coming? No. Garincha. And Baba has scored. It's 2-1. Baba has made it 2-1.
From that point, their crowd had never been quite so, not suddenly all the drums started beating and the samba came out, you know, and they beat us in the quarter-final.
Now Didi. Zito is in unmarked position. Garincha now coming to the middle, and there's Amarildo to Garincha. It's a goal, a beautiful goal by Garincha. Oh, that was a scorcher.
We went back to the hotel, and that is the most disappointing night I've had in football. I was so sure we could do it. So sure we could do it.
You thought England could win the World Cup?
Oh, I did, yeah. I thought we could do it. That was why when we came to play in 66, I thought we'd win it.
You were voted in the 62 World Cup, you were voted the best right back, so you were the best right back in the world.
Mm.
Did you get a little memento? Did you get a trophy?
Well, we actually left as the semi-final started. Can you believe this today? 6 of us were sent from Santiago Airport to New York, overnight, Manchester. London Brigade came back, the route planned. We went early. So if somebody's got that trophy...
Have you ever seen it? Have you ever seen a photo of it?
No.
No, just an acknowledgement. Best right back in the world.
That's it, yeah.
Well, that was great, but even greater was to come because Walter Winterbottom steps down, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Alf Ramsey becomes manager.
Yeah.
You become England captain.
I was captain 6. Because what happened was Johnny Haynes, he got injured in a car crash on Blackpool Promenade. I'd been captain of the young England team, so I became captain. I was captain 62, 3, 4.
Were you captain Alf's first match?
Yes.
Against France, yeah.
Yeah, we played France and we lost 5-2. And, well, he changed the team round, to be honest, and he did.
You did well to survive that then, Jim.
Well, the thing was, actually we shouldn't have played. It was freezing, it was cold, and it was in the old Column Stadium, and the floodlights were poor. We were probably poor as well. Anyway, I sat down on the bus, and Alf got in the bus, and he sat next to me, and I thought, oh. So he said, after the bus had got going on its way to the airport, he said, do we always play like that? So I said, No, I said, it must be a one-off. Well, he said, that's the first bit of decent news I've had all night. That's what he said.
How would you characterise your relationship with Alf Ramsey? So he's made you captain.
He was straightforward. He was, in his approach, really, in terms of his word game, it was fairly simple, really. Everything was one-line throwaways, one sentence, basically. But he could be quite cutting. I remember we played against Scotland at Wembley. The ball came to me on the edge of the box, on the edge of our box, and as it came, I tried to turn it away. And as I turned it away, I always remember kicked the ball into Jim Baxter's legs, and it hit his legs, and it ran back this way favourably. So I was on the outside now, as opposed to being on the inside. So Jim Baxter got, and they crossed the ball and they scored. I thought to myself, oh dear. So I got into the dressing room, and Alf came over to me, and he said, "You won't do that again, will you?" So I said, "No, I won't." "No," he said, "you won't." That was it. That was the end of that conversation. And every time the ball came to me in that situation, I just woofed it with my left foot down the field.
So you were Alf's captain, and obviously by this stage, everybody knows the World Cup will be held in England in 1966. Yeah. And you're captain up till 1964 when you get injured.
Yeah. Last day of the season.
Last day of the season, 63, 64, you get injured. World Cup's 2 years away.
It was even worse than that, because I was playing quite well at the time. You know when you're playing well. And we went to Ipswich on the last day of the season. I had my bag with me, my suitcase ready to go to what was the Little World Cup in South America, to Brazil. Alf was in the stand, it was at Ipswich, and the arrangement was all the lads would come home and I'd go with Alf to London and join the team. I was running down the field, there was nobody anywhere near me. I just suddenly got this pain. And I thought, oh my God. And I just had to stop, dead in my tracks. One or two of the crowd laughed, but I just I couldn't move. I was struggling. And I thought, what have I done here? You know, anyway, cut a long story short, they had to stretch me off.